Before we begin, just a quick note. This podcast is produced by qualified financial professionals and is intended to share general information and insights to help expats better understand common financial topics. However, everyone's circumstances are different and regulations can vary by country, so nothing discussed should be taken as personal financial, tax, or investment advice. If you're considering making financial decisions based on anything covered in this episode, we recommend seeking professional advice tailored to your individual situation.
Welcome to Expert Money Matters, the podcast where we cut through the jargon to help you make the most of your life abroad. I'm your host, Georgina Eldridge, and today we are heading to one of the most popular destinations for expats, Spain. Moving to the sun is a dream for many, but the financial reality can be a minefield if you don't have the right map. From navigating the 17 different tax regions of Spain to understanding why your UK financial advisor might not be able to help you anymore, there is a lot to cover. Joining me today to help us bridge that gap is Nicole Sandler, a private wealth manager for Chase Buchanan based in Javea, Spain. Nicole, it's great to have you on the show. To kick things off, I think it helps for our listeners to know who they are listening to. Can you tell us a little bit about your own background and your life in Spain?
I left Australia around 18 years ago as well, so I fully understand the journey that people go on when they do move abroad. Outside of work, I have a young daughter who was born here in Spain, and for me it's so fascinating watching her grow up. She speaks 4 languages and just living in such a European and international lifestyle. I also enjoy long-distance running, trail running and hiking. And I feel so lucky to live in Javea in Spain because for me, it's such a fantastic place for these sorts of sports.
It sounds like you've really embraced the lifestyle there. You mentioned working in the UK before moving. Can you walk us through your professional journey and how you transitioned from the UK system to becoming a specialist in Spain?
I've been providing qualified financial advice for 12 years now. And I started out providing advice when I lived in England for 8 years, working for quite a large wealth management firm there. Then 10 years ago, I moved to Spain where I continued working in wealth management. So although I'm Australian, I'm very much a cross-border specialist between the UK and Spain.
That cross-border angle is so crucial. So looking at your day-to-day work now, who are the typical people you're helping?
I help English-speaking expatriates who want to relocate to Spain or those individuals who are already living in Spain with their financial planning. So what that means is I understand where they are now and where they want to be, and I bridge that gap with a financial strategy.
That gap you mentioned is often where the stress comes from. When you sit down with a client to bridge that gap, how do you actually go about building a financial strategy for them?
There's definitely no one-size-fits-all approach. So it's a case of understanding what's really important to that individual, such as understanding their goals, their overall objectives, their preferences, currency preferences, their time horizon, just to name a few examples. And once I understand these sorts of aspects, I can then create a very clear strategy to get them from where they are now to where they'd like to be.
That makes sense. It has to be personal. But for someone listening who is perhaps just at the start of this journey, maybe 6 to 12 months out from moving, where should they even begin?
There's so many considerations for someone regarding savings and investments when you are looking to move into Spain. I think a good place to start that's quite useful is perhaps understanding what your potential budgeting and cash flow requirements will be for your new life in Spain. Also understanding how your existing income, investments and assets, how they will be taxed in Spain, and also how they need to be declared in Spain, because that will ultimately help you decide what you can keep and what perhaps makes sense to change as well. Quite typically when clients are moving from the UK to Spain, they sell down on property or other assets before moving, which means they usually have lump sums of money as cash in the bank. So I think another useful place to start is to understand financial service compensation scheme limits to make sure that you're protected in the right way possible for these cash savings. I think overall it's a case of having no surprises. So reaching out and having the right advice in place well before you are due to arrive in Spain. That means you won't have any unnecessary or unwanted tax bills and you can exit the UK in the best way possible.
You touched on taxes there. I think a common misconception is that tax is tax, but the systems are quite different. What are the key differences between the UK and Spanish tax systems that catch people out?
I think the key difference when you're looking at financial planning between the UK and Spain would ultimately come down to the tax and the legal systems. They're just completely different. In fact, Spain's actually grouped into 17 different autonomous regions, which all work completely differently from one another. That means I think there's changes that happen more frequently in Spain in comparison to the UK. Some of the differences, just for an example, is there's some taxes that exist in Spain that don't exist in the UK. Inheritance tax is an area that is distinctly different between the UK and Spain. So it's a case of having a financial review and understanding what you have and what makes sense for your new life in Spain.
So it's definitely not one size fits all. A lot of people moving to Spain might have existing investments in the UK, like ISAs or bonds. Can they just keep those as they are, or does that cause issues once they become Spanish residents?
When you arrive in Spain, you can have any investment that you like, as long as you report it correctly via your accountant here in Spain. However, keep in mind that UK investments won't typically be compliant with the Spanish tax system. That means the benefits that you had in the UK, such as with ISAs, for example, those benefits will fall away once you're no longer UK resident.
That is a huge potential pitfall. With all those restrictions in mind, how do you approach investing for your clients? Is there a standard portfolio you use, or is it more tailored?
When it comes to investing your money, there really is no one-size-fits-all approach. It's a case of understanding your goals, investment preferences, currency, time horizon, and your overall life objectives to create the best strategy that's fit for you. At Chase Buchanan, when it comes to our investment management approach, we have a very well-researched, robust and repeatable process. That means we don't leave any investment decisions up to any single financial advisor. That allows me to have a deep pool of research that I can use to help guide me through the investment strategy.
Now, obviously, many of our listeners will have had a financial advisor back in the UK who they've probably trusted for years. A big question we get is, why can't I just keep using my UK advisor?
UK financial advisors unfortunately cannot continue to provide you with financial advice once you leave the UK, unless they've sought European permissions to do so, which most of them haven't. This is actually a Brexit-related change that happened back in 2021. However, it's something that could have a huge impact on your investments and your policies going forwards. However, regulation aside, I believe it's best to have a local Spanish advisor who is living and breathing the same legal systems, tax and regulation systems as you, and all the nuances that's within those systems. This means that you can have more in-depth and tailored advice for your life here in Spain.
It sounds like having someone on the ground is legally required, not just a preference. You mentioned earlier that you are a cross-border specialist. Could you break down exactly what that means when you're looking at a client's portfolio?
Cross-border financial planning is very much what we specialise in. So we always take into consideration aspects such as currency or the double taxation agreement that exists between the UK and Spain. We have the knowledge and understanding of the UK system and the Spanish system and how they work together or don't work together, so we can ensure that you've got the right fit possible when it comes to your financial planning, especially when it comes to aspects such as income tax, capital gains tax, and inheritance tax. So overall, understanding the residency rules and the tax rules is really important so that you don't have any unnecessary or unwanted tax bills when you arrive.
One specific cross-border issue is currency. If someone is earning or has savings in sterling but is spending in euros, that exchange rate can really hurt. How do you manage that currency risk?
Currency is really an ongoing conversation that we have with clients to see what makes sense for their income needs and their expenses for life in Spain. Our investments also offer multiple currencies as well. So it's a case of understanding what's the right fit for that client. For example, in Spain, you need euro-denominated withdrawals to match your outgoings here in Spain. And it's quite a typical scenario that clients also require sterling-denominated withdrawals, perhaps for holidays or uses back in the UK. So it's just a case of understanding what someone's needs are and putting the best fit in place for them.
We've talked a lot about money and taxes, but financial planning is often more than just the numbers. Do you get involved in the broader estate planning side of things, like wills, inheritance, that sort of thing?
It's quite a typical situation where clients will have assets based in different countries in quite an international setup. So when we have our regular review meetings, it's really important that we don't just focus on the investment. It's a much wider financial planning discussion that includes estate planning. For example, aspects such as wills, power of attorney, inheritance planning, and legacy planning all form part of the estate planning discussions. I think one of the areas that probably differs the most between the UK and Spain would be the inheritance process. In Spain, it basically works in the complete opposite way than it does to the UK. And then each of the 17 autonomous regions of Spain have their own inheritance taxes. So it's really important to understand the current rules for your personal situation when it comes to inheritance tax planning.
It sounds like a very comprehensive service. Finally, Nicole, if someone decides to work with you, what does that relationship look like? Is it a set and forget situation, or do you stay in touch regularly?
Communication is such a fundamental part of the client relationship with their advisor. That's why we believe in sending regular communications through every market condition. For example, every week we send out a weekly investment update to clients, which summarizes what's been happening in the markets over that past week. In addition, we also send out regular valuations, but we include market commentary. This means that clients have some narrative and some background story as to what's happening with the markets and their portfolio. Then we also have regular reviews. So these might be face-to-face, via video meetings, or via telephone, depending on logistics or what that client's preferences are.
Nicole, thank you so much for sharing that expertise. It really highlights that moving to Spain is about more than just booking a flight. It's about ensuring your wealth is structured for your new life. To those listening, if you're planning a move to Spain or you're already there and want to make sure your finances are compliant, you can reach out to the team at Chase Buchanan. Thanks for listening to Expert Money Matters. Remember, trusted advice is made simple when you have the right partner.